The Baltimore Ravens escape with a huge Week 10 win over the Minnesota Vikings. We talk about the game, the offense, the defense, and what's ahead for Baltimore. All that and more coming up on Locked On Ravens.
You are Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. Part of the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day.
Welcome into another edition of Locked On Ravens, your daily Baltimore Ravens podcast. I'm your host, Kevin Oestreicher of Ravens Wire. We're here with you on the Locked On Podcast Network, your team every day. Thanks so much for being here on this instant reaction Sunday edition of Locked On Ravens. And thank you to all the everydayers, first-time listeners. If you're somewhere in the middle, thank you as well. And we get to talk about another win. It's a victory Sunday. We'll turn that into a victory Monday tomorrow. Baltimore, they escape. They get the job done. And the saying, as I said on the Locked On Ravens watch along, which you do during every game, a win is 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 a win. We could go on forever there, but a win is a win. And the Ravens get the job done. They move their record to 4-5. We'll talk about the offense, talk about the defense, talk about questions they answered and questions they still have to answer, because I think we kind of got a mixed bag of both in that category. So again, thanks so much for being here. I want to tell everyone today's episode of Locked On Ravens is brought to you by Gametime. Down the Gametime app, create an account, use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Look, I'll tell you outright that the Ravens won this game for a couple of reasons. One, the Ravens have turned into a turnover machine. Brian Wacker of the Baltimore Sun says the Ravens have forced 7 turnovers in the past 3 games, 8 in the last 4. A very different defense that we saw over the course of the first couple of weeks, months of the season. I mean, that's the big thing here. Baltimore, that was one of the big reasons. They forced turnovers, got the ball back to their offense. Keandre Jackson, huge special teams play, lots of others, huge plays as well. I mean, look, you have a real opportunity if you're the Ravens here, if you continue that turnover prowess, to go on an even bigger run than you're on right now. But that's a big reason the Ravens won this game. Another big reason the Ravens won this game was because of the Vikings' just absolute sloppiness. This was one of the worst games I've seen in a really long time in terms of mistakes. You know, we talked about it, like for the Bears game and the Dolphins game, those teams made mistakes. The Ravens took advantage. In the Rams game, the Rams made mistakes, but the Ravens couldn't really take advantage of as many of those mistakes. This was unreal how bad Minnesota was in terms of the mistakes that they made throughout the course of this game. I mean, it was horrible. Over the course of the game, Minnesota had 13 penalties for 102 yards, including, I believe it ended, I was trying to keep track, 8 false starts, I think, or formation penalties. Just ridiculously sloppy football. And the Vikings seemed like they were playing in 1st and 15 for the majority of this game. And again, like, those are mistakes you have to take advantage of. Baltimore did do that in some areas and then didn't do it at other times too. I think it was kind of a mixed bag there. We also saw J.J. McCarthy make some rookie mistakes and some really bad throws. The Vikings have some really bad play calls. But again, all you can do if you're Baltimore is take advantage of those. And I think that we saw some positives and also some things that they did have to work on. We can start offensively, though, for Baltimore. Lamar Jackson he has 17 of 29 for 176 yards with 1 touchdown, no interceptions. Also ran the ball a little bit too, 9 carries for 36 yards. Wasn't the best Lamar Jackson game in the world, but you know, he found a way. It felt like in the big moments when he needed a blitz beating play at times, Zay Flowers was there. It wasn't a huge day for Lamar, but I think that he got the job done. And the offense certainly sputtered out at times. Didn't love some of the play calling that we saw. Didn't love some of the execution on some plays as well, especially up front on the offensive line, which we'll get into. But it was enough. I mean, what counts is the Ravens are now 4-5 in the record books instead of 3-6. But those are things, again, we've talked about this, where the Ravens, these are not the types of teams you're going to see in the playoffs. The Vikings have talent on their roster, but they are still a middling to poor team. And the Ravens, they did what they were supposed to do. I mean, look at what happened with the Bills against the Dolphins on Sunday. The Bills got absolutely destroyed by Miami, a team the Ravens themselves destroyed. It can be any given Sunday. We've seen the Ravens lose to bad teams before too. I'm glad Baltimore was able to come out with a win. Derrick Henry, 20 carries for 75 yards in this game. Keaton Mitchell had 4 for 31. I already talked about Lamar's rushing stats. 4 for 31. Keaton, I haven't looked yet. I'm going to do it after I finish up all the post-game stuff here, and I'll talk about it on tomorrow's show. But Keaton ended up having, he averaged 9.5 yards per carry, or 9.7 yards per carry, at one point. And then the Ravens never really went back to him. Never really went back to him after that. They had 1 carry for 4 yards, I think, after that. 3 yards, 2 yards, something like that. It was crazy. The Ravens needed to involve him more. When he did get the ball, he got chunk plays. He put stress on the defense. And, the Ravens, Justice Hill is like officially out of the running back rotation in terms of carries at this point. But I think that a lot of the Derrick Henry first down runs are really predictable, and the Ravens aren't getting enough push up front consistently to just outright win those battles to get him to the second level. Like, that's the problem with those plays to me, is they're too predictable, and the Ravens just aren't winning consistently in those heavy on heavy matchups. And so you're seeing the Ravens get into like 2nd and 9, 2nd and 10, 2nd and 8 because they can't get that push up front. And, by the end, I mean, it must be exhausting for Derrick Henry to try to fight off all of those unblocked players or players that got through the line. I see Dre Dog saying, Kevin exhausted, man. Hey, this is the grind here. It's a grind for Derrick Henry too. And, at the end of the day, Baltimore needs to be able to win those battles more effectively, because it's not just about, I see people talking about, Henry's washed, and that. I don't think that's the case. I just think that the play calling is too we know you're running the ball on this play at times. And also, you can be Derrick Henry, you can be Saquon Barkley, you can be Lamar Jackson, or whoever you want to be. You hear the car going by, you can be the fastest runner in the world if you want to be as fast as that car that just went by. You're not getting by anybody who has 3 defenders right in front of you. So that's the problem, right? The Ravens have to, I think, be smarter and more effective with their personnel when it's working for them, right? When you have an ability to throw out a guy like Keaton Mitchell consistently, and I'm not saying take away Derrick Henry's carries and, make Keaton the bell cow, but you have to get him more opportunities there. Now, I was really impressed with Zay Flowers for the majority of this game, finding soft spots. He had a really nasty sidestep move, which I thought was it was disgusting in the best way. Disgusting. And I think for me, when you see Zay, if you're the Ravens, you absolutely have to pay this man. 4 for 75 on the day. Target share demon again. 6 on the day for him. Actually, Lamar was spreading the ball around a decent amount. 5 targets for Likely, 5 targets for Andrews. A couple of really rough drops early in this game for Andrews and Likely. There was also miscommunication, it felt like, between Lamar and Likely, where Lamar got frustrated. So the offense certainly out of sorts at points, and especially early on, where Baltimore has had that slow start. And that happened again in this game where, the defense got walked down by J.J. McCarthy and the offense really couldn't respond. They weren't converting in the red zone. On the day, Baltimore did get better. They were not great on third down. 6 for 15, still not a great number. Minnesota 3 for 14. We'll talk about that in a little bit. But the Ravens in the red zone, 2 for 5. So they were settling for field goals, which wasn't great. And Minnesota, again, coming into this game, was a top 7 third down defense and a top 5 red zone defense. So we saw that throughout the game, but it felt like the Ravens were in control. And then all of a sudden it's like, all right, a couple of bad calls by the refs, a couple of bad miscommunications defensively. And all of a sudden you're sweating out this 4th down play to see if the Vikings are going to try to, get in the end zone here and actually convert it. So, the game in the second half was much more in the Ravens' control than the box score would indicate, right? The box score would indicate, the Ravens, they won by 1 possession and the Vikings had the ball driving and the Ravens had to stop them on 4th down. But right at the end of that first half, where the Ravens were able to get that 3 points, all the way up until probably like midway-ish through the fourth quarter, even a little further than that, probably, the Ravens were in decent control of the game. And the Ravens are a huge momentum team. So a couple of those plays started to go the opposite way. And then all of a sudden, you're like, okay, now we kind of got to sweat this thing out. But it became a narrowly escape. You got to kind of run out of there. It was almost like the Dallas game in a way last season, although the Dallas game was a lot more. You got to sweat that thing out because Baltimore is up by a ton in that Dallas game. The Dallas game all the way back almost. Kind of felt like that Dallas game last season in week 3 where the Ravens were in control. And then all of a sudden it kind of slips away a little bit and then it keeps slipping. And then, that's how that felt to me at least. So we're going to have to see because the Ravens, I think they got into this pattern of, especially like late in the game when they're trying to run clock and all of a sudden, like, Lamar's getting sacked, they're throwing the ball. And I didn't have necessarily a problem with the Ravens on that final third down play, them throwing it with Lamar and putting the ball in Lamar's hands. It was the drive before that or 2 drives before that where they started throwing the ball and they threw it multiple times to stop the clock to keep Minnesota alive in the game. And I get it. You can't run on every single play. Like, you're not going to do that. But it just felt like at times you're kind of just like, okay, can't keep stopping the clock like that. Not going to be a formula for success. Baltimore held the ball for 32 minutes and 35 seconds compared to Minnesota's 27-25. And Minnesota's defense, you could tell, was getting tired out there. Derrick Henry started to find more success as the game went on. So that's kind of what Derrick Henry does. And, I think it's a really interesting dynamic offensively. So Baltimore, again, they showed some stuff offensively, but still a lot to clean up on and work on for them in that regard. Coming up, though, we're going to talk about the defense as well as we'll finish up the conversation around the O-line as well, because I know a lot of people are talking about that too. So be sure you stay tuned. We have a lot coming your way here on this instant reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, the show is brought to you by Mint Mobile. If you're still overpaying for wireless, it's time to say yes to saying no. At Mint Mobile, their favorite word is no. No contracts, no monthly bills, no overages, no hidden fees, no BS. I said yes to making the switch and getting premium wireless for just $15 a month, and Mint makes it simple. All plans come with high-speed data and unlimited talk and text delivered on the nation's largest 5G network. You can even bring your own phone and keep your same number and contacts. I love that you're getting the same quality service you had before, but for a fraction of the price, and the setup is super easy. You kept your number, and then you're running in minutes. Ready to say yes to saying no? Make the switch at mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. That's mintmobile.com/LockedOnNFL. Upfront payment of $45 required, equivalent to $15 a month. Limited time new customer offer for first 3 months only. Speeds may slow above 35 gigabytes on unlimited plan. Taxes and fees extra. See Mint Mobile for details. And the show is brought to you by Gametime. NFL season is back, and honestly, there's nothing better than being in the stadium surrounded by fans, cheering on your team. Let's be honest, getting tickets can be a hassle between queues, login screens, and prices jumping to checkout. It's frustrating. That's why I use Gametime, the app that gives the advantage back to fans. Gametime is fast, easy, and backed by the Gametime guarantee. You'll always get 100% authentic tickets delivered on time and at the best price. Plus, all fees are included, so the price you see is the price you pay. I pulled up Gametime, and in just a couple taps, I saw amazing deals. I'm talking about your favorite NFL games as low as $100. The app made it super simple. I could even see the exact view from my seat before buying. I love zone deals, too. You pick the section, Gametime picks the seats, and you save big. Honestly, it's faster, cheaper, and less stressful than any other way I've bought tickets. Download the Gametime app, create an account, and use code LOCKEDONNFL for $20 off your first purchase. Terms apply. Again, that's promo code LOCKEDON NFL for $20 off. Swipe, tap, ticket, go. Download Gametime today. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here with you, diving into the Ravens' win against the Minnesota Vikings in week number 10. They moved to 4-5. And a big one for Baltimore because we know the Ravens have to stack as many wins as possible. So appreciate everybody for being here on this instant reaction edition of the show. We have so much game day content for as well as Ravens content. So be sure you hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along and subscribe in audio form. We got the Locked On Ravens watch along. We reacted to every single play of the game live. If you missed out on that or you didn't know about it, be sure you tune in for our watch alongs. Do it every single game. We have the instant reaction shows. We have the Locked On Ravens squad show, which is going to come up right after this, by the way. So be sure you stay tuned for all that. Regular show Monday through Friday, 6 a.m. Eastern time. We have so much content Ravens wise on Locked On Ravens. Now, let's talk about the offensive line a little bit before we move into the defense, because I think the offensive line almost deserves its own conversation in a way. It's bad. It's rough right now. And look, there were positives in this game from the offensive line, but it just felt like there were a lot more glaring holes that we just continue to see each and every single week. Not every play was bad. Some of the plays were good. We saw guys get to the second level, get to the outside and get to their man. But it's so glaring when every single week you see, and it's Falele and Voorhees in particular, but we also saw it with Ricard at times, Linderbaum at times. And look, there was one play that I specifically singled out on the watch along that was, Isaiah Likely and Roger Rosengarten getting out into space and just moving bodies up front. Like it happens. Like those types of plays do happen for Baltimore in games. But it's the ones where it's like those first down runs, guys get beat. Daniel Falele, multiple missed assignments, multiple times where you're just kind of sitting there like another whiff or another guy getting badly beat. And it's not just Falele. I'm not just trying to single him out, but in this game in particular and other times as well, there were multiple egregious misses or whiffs that directly impacted Lamar getting hit. And Lamar got hit hard. I mean, that roughing the passer play, which again, it is controversial. It's technically textbook, but you also have to wonder, what does the guy have to do to play defense in the NFL anymore? But regardless, like Lamar got hit hard on that play. And, we know like the play that at Oliver with Lamar in week 1, you can't have Lamar getting hit like that, especially not that hard by guys. So it's tough. And I see, this is a really good point by Dre Dog here, who says Daniel Falele is causing people to have to overcompensate. And that's a really good point. It's something I've actually talked about on the show. So shout out to you, Dre, for bringing that up. Because, for example, like a Linderbaum, right? Linderbaum, I think we all know, is a pretty solid NFL center, right? But he's had some tough moments at times this year, which some of it has just been him getting blown off the ball. But other times, like imagine him playing next to a Kevin Zeitler or a Marshall Yanda type player. Now, I don't need the Ravens to put a future Hall of Famer beside him on either side. I would love it, but it's not necessary to do so. I mean, I think for Lamar, do whatever you can to get that talent across from Linderbaum. But sometimes, like Linderbaum is playing next to two guys that aren't necessarily playing super well right now. So when it comes to Linderbaum, he sometimes does have to overcompensate, which is a really good point. So at the end of the day, Baltimore's offensive line is still an issue. I think we see the potential and we see the flashes from them and getting blocked up front. Like, as a defense, they're going to have to really figure out, like from like an opposing defense's perspective, they're already figuring out how to exploit that, who to target. And that's going to be a problem when you're playing against better pass rushes than Minnesota's, because again, Minnesota, they bring a lot of pressure. They bring a lot of blitzes. But I thought Baltimore and Lamar in particular handled it honestly pretty well in this game. So, at the end of the day, Baltimore has a lot of things to still work on. Offensive line, do I expect them to make a change? Not when they're winning. I think they should, but are they going to? I don't know. It's a tough situation right now because I think they need to, but they're also winning. And I know that when they're winning, they're likely not going to make that change. So it's tough. But all right, let's talk about the defense a little bit here for the Ravens, because I thought defensively, again, still some good, still some bad. And look, overall, I think what they did, they held Minnesota to 3 of 14 on third down, like I talked about, 2 for 5 on fourth down, which, isn't necessarily horrible. The Ravens, they did get in a lot of positive defensive situations because of the 13 Minnesota penalties, a lot of which did come of the false start variety. So shout out to Minnesota for that. But other than that, with Baltimore, I love the turnovers. We mentioned it at the top of the show. Turnovers. Justin Jefferson, too. Shutting down Justin Jefferson was a key. And I talked about it during the watch along, too. I said that, look, because when Jalen Naylor was making plays, I think I might have said Josh Naylor. When Jalen Naylor was making plays, all right, that's cool. He had 5 for 124 and a touchdown. Huge Jalen Naylor game. You live with that because you don't want to let the stars beat you. You don't want to let Justin Jefferson beat you. We talked about that all last season, where it seemed like Devontae Adams in Las Vegas or CeeDee Lamb in Dallas or Jamar Chase in Cincinnati, like felt like the star receiver was always beating the Ravens. felt like they couldn't match up with that guy. When you live with other guys beating you, you don't live with the star player beating you. You shade everything you have over there. You do what you can to stop that guy and say, all right, we're taking away your guy. Go do it with other guys. And they did that with Justin Jefferson. Jefferson was distraught the entire game. The Ravens had him absolutely in shambles. 4 for 37 for Jefferson on the day. He was, begging for flags and, was really upset with how the game was going. They were in his head. Chidobe Awuzie, Nate Wiggins, all the secondary, they stepped up and they stopped Jefferson. They did. So I want to give a huge shout out. Jordan Addison, again, not really a factor as well. 3 carries for 35 yards there. Nate led the team in tackles with 7, had a couple of nice deflections. Travis Jones, and this is what I want to talk about, because look, if we talk about the pressure and the D-line stuff, not a huge pressure game for Baltimore, honestly. Travis Jones had the 1 sack. They did get home a couple. Dre'Mont Jones had a huge rip move, which was, it was nasty. It was a nasty rip move through. I have to watch it again. And actually, just some breaking news, not really like breaking for the Ravens perspective, but John Harbaugh is apparently now won in every opposing city in the NFL. So, all right, cool. Shout out to John Harbaugh for that. But yeah, I'll tell you what. Defensively, one of the key things, and I've talked about this for years on Locked On Ravens if you've been here with me, one of the biggest things that the Ravens have done defensively over the last couple of, well, even beyond that, honestly, tipping the ball at the line of scrimmage. The Ravens had, I want to try to count how many they had because it was a ton. So Travis Jones had 2 tips at the line. John Jenkins had 1. Hamilton had 2 with, I believe, at least 1. No, both, I think, came from the line. Let's see. Van Noy had 1. Anybody else? Roquan. I can't remember. No, Roquan's, I think, was the interception that was supposed. That interception, by the way, which was not an interception. It was an interception. It was ridiculous that the NFL called it that way. They did the whole, sky review thing, just absolutely unbelievable. And that shifted how the game ended. The Ravens would have put the game away right there. Ridiculous that happened that way. And Roquan had a good game. Roquan had a good game. And yep, Cam's saying it. Can we give Roquan some credit? Absolutely. And that's what we do, right? I love doing that here on this show where, we give guys credit where it's due, and then you criticize where it's due, right? It's a two-way street. And for Roquan, had a tough start to the season, but has really come out looking rejuvenated ever since coming back. He's looked really fast. The defense just looks really fast out there, for being honest, right? And there's still like some play call things and guys getting beat. Like all that stuff is still there. The pressure and the pass rush still has to improve. They're not going to be playing J.J. McCarthy every week, who, again, did make some mistakes and some pretty crucial ones. But everybody's flying. The play that sticks out to me, there are multiple, but the big play that sticks out to me was early in the game when the Vikings had that 3rd and, I think it was 11, 3rd and 12. And then the Vikings threw that screen play to Jefferson, who then threw it back to McCarthy, and he ran. Kyle Van Noy is like the only Raven on that side. The Vikings had like 5 or 6 blockers out in front. And the Ravens somehow, Van Noy kind of tripped up McCarthy just enough to slow him down. And then Kyle Hamilton would boom all the way from like the other side of the field, came all the way back and got McCarthy down. I think Roquan was there. Maybe Marlon was in on that too. I can't remember. I know Hamilton was in on that play, but it's like they are flying to the football right now. And it is truly like team mentality, everybody to the ball, gang tackling guys, like everybody is getting to the football. Everybody's getting to the football, which is awesome. So I love the play that we've seen from the defense in terms of being fast and aggressive, and especially with the blitzing and whatnot. Again, the Vikings struggled to run the ball at first, but then as the game went on, they actually started to find something and finished the day actually running the ball better than the Ravens did. 5.7 yards per carry compared to 5.6 for 5.7 for the Vikings, 5.6. Or no, I'm looking at passing. Well, okay, they still ended up. I was still right, although it was a lot more egregious. The Vikings ended up averaging 6.7 yards per rush. The Ravens just 4.2. So the Vikings, look, the Ravens, this is what we've kind of seen, where sometimes teams will win in a lot of different categories and look better in a lot of different box score categories. but it's about timing and timely plays, timely turnovers, and that's what the Ravens did. JJ McCarthy, couple of legitimate arm punts. I know it's kind of a joke with the whole Josh Allen thing when that got out, and that was kind of like the MVP ceiling thing for Josh on social media. But literally, McCarthy just kind of threw up these deep balls on 3rd and 1 was the first one for no reason, or maybe that was the second one. I can't remember. But again, 2 plays where McCarthy just kind of throws up air balls, and Malachi Starks comes down with 1 second career interception for Malachi. Shout out to Malachi. Back-to-back weeks, interception machine, Malachi Starks, as we now know him by on Locked On Ravens. And also, Marlon Humphrey, just a natural trip, no interference. All you need there is Marlon Humphrey reaching up and getting the interception. Now, Marlon is playing injured too, by the way. I don't know. I haven't seen an update, at least personally, from John Harbaugh about Marlon. I see it. What did he end up saying about Marlon? I see that he said something. I see someone told me. Finger issue for Marlon, and he has that. I think it's a cast on or a wrap on. So yeah, it's been tough. And I see Vontae talking about Teddy Buchanan. Teddy's a problem. He's been there was one play, man. I can't remember. When was it? I can't remember when it was, but there was one play where Teddy Buchanan absolutely got shot out of a cannon and tackled a guy. And he's been playing really fast. And that's what I'm talking about. Like the defense playing really fast and really aggressive. So I'm excited to see the defense hopefully continue to grow. You have a couple of easy games on your schedule here and games you should win. Doesn't mean you're going to win them, but you're going to be favored in them. And there's a clear talent advantage for Baltimore. The defense has to continue to stack. Again, you got to find the pass rush. If the pass rush can get it together and get it going, this defense truly unlocks a whole nother, maybe 5 different levels that they can get to. So I'm really excited here for this Ravens team. And we do have to shout out the special teams. And speaking of, we got Steve Loop. For those that don't know, Steve is Tyler's dad, Tyler Loop's dad. Checks in with us on Locked On Ravens. We love Steve over here. We love Tyler over here and the whole special teams unit on Locked. And Steve, I saw on that punt by Jordan, Nick Moore got a tackle. He crunched somebody. So everybody contributing on the special teams between Tyler, Jordan, and Nick. So shout out to that unit. And again, I think that those guys actually, there were a little bit of, there was a couple of, what's going on here? Jordan had a weird punt. Tyler obviously missed a long field goal, but those guys battled through it. You know what's really cool to me? We've talked about Tyler and, he's had to work through some kickoff stuff throughout the course of the season, right? But he had 2 of the most perfectly placed kickoffs I have seen back to back that resulted in 2 Vikings fumbles. And so that's just what it is. It's him working through stuff and figuring things out. He's still been pretty nails as a field goal kicker. I know he missed a long 56-yarder, but when the Ravens have needed him, he's been there for them and still working through stuff, still getting better. And I loved that he was able to be it because, again, that ball was right on the end line, which is exactly where you're supposed to put it. And he was a major factor there too. So I love the fact that we saw that. And again, the Ravens needed Tyler. Like I see prophets saying Loop carried the first half. The Ravens weren't converting in the red zone. So they had to get Tyler involved. And all right, go out there, get us points, Tyler. And that's absolutely what he did. So shout out to the special teams as well. A win is a win. And I see people in the comments saying, we took the points, and I'm glad that they did. So coming up in the final part of the show, we'll dive into what's next for the Ravens. We'll look at their schedule. We'll wrap up our analysis of this Vikings game as well, and a lot more. So stay tuned. Plenty coming your way here on the Instant Reaction edition of Locked On Ravens. First, this show is brought to you by PrizePicks, and this episode is brought to you by PrizePicks. You and I make decisions every day, but on PrizePicks, being right can get you paid. Don't miss any of the excitement of the sports season, whether you're following the NFL, NBA, or both. There's no better time to jump in on the action. If you haven't tried it yet, PrizePicks is the simplest way to play. Just pick more or less on at least 2 player stats. If you get them right, you win. It takes less than 60 seconds to make your lineup, and you can play anywhere PrizePicks operates, including California, Texas, and Georgia. And I've been using PrizePicks during both football Sundays and NBA tip-offs. It keeps every game exciting. I like picking my favorite players like Patrick Mahomes, Lamar Jackson. You got Josh Allen, all the good quarterbacks. You also got NBA, Steph Curry, Nikola Jokic, LeBron James, Luka Doncic, everybody to see how my predictions play out. The new stacks feature is a game changer. You can now pick more on Steph Curry's 3-pointers, points, assists in the same lineup. Plus, if one of your players leaves early with an injury, the injury reboot saves my lineups from a loss. Download the PrizePicks app today and use code LOCKEDONNFL to get $50 in lineups after you play your first $5 lineup. That's code LOCKEDONNFL for $50 in lineups after your first $5 lineup. PrizePicks, it's good to be right. Moving along on Locked On Ravens, Kevin Oestreicher still here rocking out with you. The Ravens moved to 4-5. They pick up a huge week number 10 win over the Vikings. Appreciate everybody for being here, making Locked On Ravens a part of your day, your first listen each and every single day. We have amazing communities over here on Locked On Ravens, the big Locked On Ravens community, but we have obviously the regular show community, the watch-along community, instant reaction community. We got all the community squad show community. Be sure you check out the squad show after this too, by the way. 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. All right, let's look here at what's ahead for Baltimore. And I see John Harbaugh praising Zach Orr, really cool. John Harbaugh saying the win. What a great win for this team. So I know he's happy with it, and the players are happy for it too. And this defense is absolutely, they're playing well considering. Look, and I see the Chris Cooper and Sleeper Ravens that he does a great job with that account over there. Ravens defense since the bye week, 3 touchdowns allowed over the 3 games, 10 forced turnovers, including on downs, 67.5 opposing passer rating average, 21 quarterback hits, and 13.5 points per game. I mean, you are just balling out right now defensively. Still with some stuff to work on, though. Again, like the pass rush still needs improvement. They need to get better there. But I think with what the aggressive style, and I love that the fact that Baltimore's defense and Zach Orr is saying, we're not going to let you sit back there if we can't get pressure with 4. We're going to come after you. We're going to make it work for it. And that's exactly what this team needs to do. Now, what do they need to do better moving forward? Obviously, we talked about the pass rush, but that obviously is not the biggest issue. And I see people talking about it in the chat. It is still the offensive line. It is still the offensive line. And again, it's hard. I said this in the first part of the show. I don't think Baltimore is going to make a change. They absolutely have to, but I don't think they're going to. And that's the problem. I mean, they're winning. I think that's another reason why they're not going to, but the time to do it was during the bye week. And, I know John Harbaugh's kind of said that everything's on the table deal and the whole 9 yards there, but it's horrendous why we're still seeing Daniel Falele being trotted out there. Even a guy like Voorhees, it's just tough. It's just really, really tough. So that's the biggest issue for me. It all starts up front. And I've said that for years here on this show, by the way, right? All starts up front for an offense. You need to be able to get your guys moving in space, get them out in front, get them to the second level. But when guys aren't even blocking at the first level, getting beat so badly off the ball, making mistakes over and over again, it's tough. I mean, you should be able to win these heavy on heavy situations. And, Baltimore's just not doing it. And we've seen the stats, we'll probably see them again after this game too, where there were multiple occasions where, Daniel Falele putting Lamar Jackson in harm's way or making a tough whiff on a play. Again, look, Daniel Falele, he doesn't miss every single block, right? I do want to say that. But his whiffs and his bad plays are so egregious that it will come back to bite them, especially against teams with better pass rushes. Again, Minnesota sends a lot of pressure, but in terms of sacks, they were only kind of like top 10-ish, top 12-ish, and their pressure percentage, while it's first in the NFL, a lot of that has to do with the blitzing. So, it's about manufacturing pressure, which is good, but one-on-one is another big issue there as well. So it's tough, and they need to make a change, but they're not necessarily going to, I don't think. So the Ravens schedule, though, coming up, you got the Browns, the Jets, the Bengals, and the Steelers. 3 of 4. You're playing all the AFC North Division games in there. And then you got the Jets. You're going to have 3 games at home. So you're rounding out your 3-game road trip on Sunday going to Cleveland. And then you're going to have the 3-game homestand with the Jets, the Bengals, and the Steelers. You're going to have another short week coming up quickly, though, with that Bengals game on Thanksgiving night. I think Baltimore's in a good spot. I think Baltimore's in a good spot. They have the opportunity to stack some wins before a really tough 3-game stretch to end their season. Still a lot of time to improve. And again, like they're doing what they're supposed to do, beating up on medium to bad teams. Because again, look what happened with the Dolphins and the Bills today on Sunday. That's a prime example of any team can beat you any given Sunday in the NFL. The Ravens took care of their business. The Bills did not. Got to take those games seriously. Bills got the loss today. I'm hoping the Steelers can lose to the Chargers tonight. That would be massive for the Ravens and pull their division lead down even further for the Steelers. So a lot of positives you can take away from this game, but still a lot of other things they need to work on. And look, with that Browns team, Dylan Gabriel apparently going to be the starter again in this one. So it doesn't look like Shedeur Sanders will start for Cleveland in that game. Excuse me. You had to get this win to enter a stretch of pretty winnable games. And, you're still in that winnable game category, but you got to continue the job. So that's all I have for you here today on Locked On Ravens. Thank you so much for tuning into the Instant Reaction Show. On the way out, be sure to hit the like and subscribe button in video form and follow along in audio form. 5 days a week plus more of daily Ravens coverage. And coming up next, we got the Locked On Ravens Squad Show. So be sure to stick around for that. And then also we'll have our Monday episode in the morning, 6 a.m. Eastern time. So be sure to stay tuned, and I'll see you right back here soon on Locked On Ravens.